All right, there we go. So I would like to welcome everybody to the Deadheading and Other Stories Zoom launch, celebrating Beth's latest book. So everybody, I don't know if you guys have your copy, but yay, by the way, absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous cover. Congratulations, Beth, on the new release. I'm honored to be hosting the launch event tonight. So I am Beth's publicist. My name is Lori Hetler. For those of you that don't know me, I started out just reviewing small press books back in 2007, 2008, when Goodreads started becoming a thing. So I come into publicity through a very passionate, but very naive way, right? I'm not a writer. I don't write. I need you guys to write for me. So I appreciate everything that authors do in general. And I am extremely excited for tonight's event. We have a fabulous lineup. For those of you who might not have seen the flyers or the information that was going out on Facebook and Twitter, we're very pleased to have in our lineup tonight, Nancy Stohlman, KB Carle, Meg Pillow. We have Hillary, who I don't think has made it yet, but she should be here, Hillary Leftwich. We have AC Warner, Kathy Fish, Robert James Russell, Jim Warner, and of course, our star of the evening, Beth. So before we get into the readings, you guys might have noticed as you came on that everybody is on mute. We're going to ask the readers to just unmute themselves as it is their turn to read, and then they will remute themselves afterwards. When they're done reading, they will post a link either to their site or to their book so that if you guys enjoyed what you heard, you can purchase their work or get to know them better online. And then additionally, feel free to unmute yourselves in between each reading just to clap, share your thanks and gratitude to those that have read. Throughout the night, we will have interspersed between the readings some giveaways. So Beth has some mugs. She has some limited size t-shirts, and she will be doing signed copies as well. So we'll be asking some questions and asking you guys to dump some answers into the chat, and then we'll be doing some random giveaways throughout the evening, just to spice things up a little bit. All right. Okay, so without further ado, I will turn it over briefly to Beth so that she can welcome everybody as well.
Hi, everybody. It's a little overwhelming to see so many of you in the little squares. The Muppet squares is what I call them. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I hope that you'll give these readers your attention tonight. Every single one of them has inspired me to be a better writer and a better human. And that's why I asked them to share this moment with me. Some of them have books, some of them don't and should. So if there's anybody out there in charge of those things, get on it. So I'm really grateful to Lori for all of her support throughout this. She's been a fabulous publicist, not fabulous. That's a completely different thing. Though I do hear she likes that. So if you ever need services in that way, I highly recommend her. She's been lovely. And I did this the first time without a publicist because, you know, that costs money. But this time I knew that I was way too anxious to go it alone. And she's been really, really helpful. So thank you all for being here. It means the world to me. And I hope you like the book and have fun tonight. Okay. And Nancy's going to be our first reader, and I've taken multiple classes with Nancy and have traveled to Italy with Nancy and Kathy, and some of my favorite memories are with this lovely human. So take it away.
Thank you so much for having me here on this super special day. I remember it must have been a year and a half ago when you announced you'd won this prize from Red Hen, and oh my God, and I was like, Red Hen, oh my God. And so it's really exciting to get like big artifact in my hands right now and be here celebrating with all of you. So since I'm going first, and that's partially because I'm going to have to drop off, I wanted to start by reading a piece from the book, which is always a little scary to read an author's work in front of them, but I'm going to hopefully do it justice. And then I'll read a tiny little thing for myself before I finish. So this is from the book, and it's called A Five-Pointed Failed Paper Love Weapon. You wear your hair down and your brother's jeans the day the only boy you date freshman year staples himself in the chest. You were still sticky from gym because you could never bring yourself to shower in front of people, but you hope the perfume you stole masks the odor. You blot your cheeks, nose, and chin before you see him on the path to yearbook. He's everything your girlfriends told you to want. Black hair hanging over one eye, patches on a moto jacket, tight rolled jeans, messed up like you. You try to speak to the boy, to tell him you want to take his boots home to your room to eat, to put your forefinger on his eyelids and absorb the image you know can't be unseen, the one of his friend hanging by a chain from a dogwood, to tell him how the gravel sound of his voice makes something in your hip bones crack, how the pain in your chest at night after he finally hangs up must make you the youngest person in the world to suffer heart attacks. But all you can do is touch his skull earring, ask where he got it. As he leans you up against the locker, you notice the dust mop smell of the hallway, doors clicking closed, and a few straggling runners trying to make it to class. You are late. You squirm away and dig a knuckle into your sternum. He pulls on his own hair. Fine, whatever. I thought you loved me. You try to give him the love letter. You fold it into a star, but he flicks your arm away, sending it sailing to the floor. A failed paper love weapon you lift off the linoleum by 2 of its 5 points. In yearbook, you cut pictures and wax them onto mock-up pages, candid shots of Emily and Allison and Farah, all branded up like race car drivers and lording over each other. No one's permission ever given or granted to separate. An image of the math nerds lined up eating bag lunches on the floor at the back of the cafeteria. The full page in memoriam for your friend's suicide his parents said was an accident. You snip your open palm and watch your own blood bead. When you see him again after school, he's halfway to his car. You run, your backpack thumping so hard it hurts your shoulders. Wait for me, the girl who knows how to bruise herself. He turns after he unlocks the car door. On the white lettering of his black flag t-shirt, red spots soak through, spaced the width of staples. 17 staples equal 34 holes. You ask, what's wrong? He says, you don't love me. So many times the words become nothing but moan. You reach in through the window, touch his knee, and take a cigarette from the dash, leaning over him to light it. You take a drag and lean back against his car door. Without looking back at him, you smoke your cigarette like you have nothing else to do. The Emilys and the Farahs are waiting. When you finish, he passes you an empty Coke can for the butt and tells you to get in the car. Before he drops you home, he pulls you off into an adjacent field. Amid swaying woods and broken bottles, you kiss all 34 of his wounds, wishing he were the first or the last violent man in your life. And that's from Beth. And then I thought I would read just a tiny one that reminded me a little bit. I was thinking, what would Beth love? This is really short, but I was thinking about the point of view, and I was thinking about Beth's tarot card pictures on Instagram. And so this is called The King of Big Gulps. It's very new. The King of Big Gulps, seen here seated in his living room, has been your best friend for over 30 years. In this card, he's in a lot of pain, sitting uncomfortably in his easy chair. Notice the pack of cigarettes on the table, a symbol of defeat. The big gulp beside him is brimming with the black waters of capitalism. He is dressed in the traditional garb of the town, old jeans, old sneakers, old t-shirts stretched across his massive bulk. His hair is going white, a nod to his maturity and wisdom. Though the king is clearly suffering, clearly at war with his own body, he is surrounded by the same aura of light seen in the Dollar General card. If you've drawn the king of big gulps, he may have called you 6 weeks ago to say he was dying, to ask you as his oldest friend to throw him a memorial. You might have wept together on the phone, separated by miles and decades. You will always remember the king as he was, controlling the winds. Now he's a Poseidon, stripped of power. Notice the ankle and wrist cuffs. Notice the key to salvation around his neck. Receiving the king of big gulps is an enigma of healing, how we choose to heal and how we don't. The king asks us to question our illusions. How do we keep ourselves in our own chains? How do we find the key around our own necks? If you draw this card, you may find yourself driving 10 hours across Kansas and Missouri, a place you haven't seen in 12 years, to find out before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. All right,
Love it.
I'm gonna admit one person really quickly. It makes me nervous when people don't have complete names. I'm just terrified of Zoom bombers. All right. So we did not have an opportunity to read Nancy's bio before she read, so I'm going to do that now for those of you who may not be familiar. Nancy's latest book, Going Short, An Invitation to Flash Fiction, was a 2021 Reader Views Gold Award winner, a Next Generation Indie Book Award finalist, and an International Book Award finalist. She's the author of flash fiction collections and flash novels, including Madame Velvet's Cabaret of Oddities, The Monster Opera, and The Vixen Scream and Other Bible Stories. Her work has been anthologized widely, appearing in W.W. Norton Anthology New Micro, Exceptionally Short Fiction, Macmillan's The Practice of Fiction, and the Best Small Fictions 2019, as well as adapted for both stage and screen. She teaches at the University of Colorado Boulder and around the world. And you can find out more about her at nancystohlman.com. Thank you again, Nancy. All right, we're ready for our next reader. So we're going to be inviting KB Carle to the stage. She lives and writes outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and is an associate editor at Fractured Lit and an editor at Flashback Fiction. Her stories have appeared in Waxwing Magazine, Matchbook, Bending Genres, No Contact Magazine, and have been nominated for the Best of the Net, Best Small Fictions, and the Pushcart Prize. She can be found online at kbcarle.com or on Twitter at kbcarle. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Beth, for inviting me to read tonight in celebration of your fabulous collection. Tonight, I'll be reading Define a Good Woman, which is my flash fiction that was published in Waxwing. My doctors tell me I'm depressed because I'm chronically ill. My mother says I'm chronically ill because I'm depressed. My father doesn't believe or acknowledge my depression. You're just tired, he says. My husband acknowledges my depression too much. Bad day, he says, holding my hand, rubbing my back, poking and prodding my tightened muscles, searching for any signs of life. Wilma Flintstone washes dishes made of stone with water that shoots from a mammoth's blue trunk. She never questions the amount of nose dew she spreads on her plates, cups, and knives. Doesn't acknowledge the ow that escapes the mammoth when she tugs on his nose too hard. She's a housewife, and the last thing she needs is to acknowledge that her appliances have feelings. I think I'll die in this bed. Not today, but someday, wrapped in fleece sheets covered in Canadian geese. Wilma was supposed to have a baby boy during season 3 of the Flintstones until someone came up with the ideal Flintstone toy for little girls. Imagine Fred's surprise to find Wilma in the baby's room, packing 3 paychecks worth of clothes and toys. My husband believes my body is made of glass. The slightest touch or harsh word will cause me to splinter and chatter. I tell him I am the rubber stick of a hot glue gun. I bend over toilets, straighten as doctors prescribe new treatments. My body melts when being pushed through MRI machines and wheelchairs until I'm unrecognizable and adhering to the nearest surface. Wilma doesn't know her best friend and neighbor, Betty Rubble, will adopt a baby boy one season after Fred returns the items meant for their son. My father finds me in bed when he and my mother come to visit. He asks if I'm coming downstairs. I tell him I can't. I have a fever. My legs are swollen. My bones are at war with every muscle in my body. He closes the door. I hear him go downstairs, tell my mother that I'm sleeping. Wilma complains to Fred that the garbage disposal is broken. She balances their sleeping daughter, Pebbles, on her hip, vacuums with one foot, irons with her free hand. In a minute, says Fred, rubbing his hands together and smacking his lips, his ritual before devouring his Bronto burger. Wilma rolls her eyes. Pebbles wakes and starts to cry. My husband and I link arms in the park, and I don't shrink away from his touch. I rub my nose into his arm. He laughs and kisses my forehead. We are in college again, in love again. For date night, Fred takes Wilma bowling. At first, she crosses her legs and pouts, complains Fred never thinks about her and what she likes. Oh, Fred, she says when he asks if she's having fun. Before Fred apologizes, before Wilma asks Fred if he knows what he's apologizing for, Mr. Slate, Fred's boss, laughs. That's all it takes to send Wilma into a rage. Nobody laughs at her Fred. She grabs his stone ball, tiptoes just like Fred taught her, and releases. Strike, she says, and smirks at Mr. Slate. She picks up Fred, flings him over her shoulder, makes him promise to take her dancing next time. My mother sits on the edge of my bed and tells me I have a good man. I tell her I know, and I do know, just like I know I'm not a good woman. Fred exchanges the old garbage disposal for a new one. Wilma kisses his cheek. Pebbles claps and Dino barks, running circles around the whole family. Everyone laughs. The credits play. No one talks about what happens to the now homeless Pigosaurus, a purple pig with tusks, black spots, and purple spines running down his back, that's been eating the Flintstones trash for years. I imagine another woman, how she fills a room with her scent, sometimes pine or bacon. Burning leaves would be her favorite scent, my husband's favorite scent. My imaginary woman wouldn't calculate how long to laugh at a joke, edit her response to, "Are you okay?" She just knows things. She knows she is the imaginary woman, knows how to love my husband, be the daughter my parents miss. She knows I'm upstairs imagining her. My imaginary woman knows that the strength to leave this bed will never find me, that I'll only burrow deeper under the covers. Fred and Wilma Flintstone are one of the first television couples to sleep in the same bed. If you ask Fred, he'll say they were the first animated couple to do so. Take that, Jetson. Wilma giggles, her signature giggle, knowing her husband's secret, that he can only sleep when they're cuddled up together, his arm wrapped around her waist. He knows when she's having a nightmare by the way her body curves and clenches. During those moments, she feels his arm tighten around her, feels his lips find her in the dark. I have settled on a life where I live in this bed, where my husband crawls in and asks, "Can I touch you?" I love the sound of his voice in the dark, how it seeps into my skin. "No," I say, because his voice isn't enough. "Just let me look at you." We stare at one another until he tells me about his day, until I tell him I'm sure my father will never understand, how my mother does, but doesn't know what to do. I feel his fingers brush against mine, the small "why" that slips from his lips when I pull away. "I can't," I say. I see my husband's face in the dark, his skin a sheath pulled over bone, eyes searching for a version of me that is trapped in bed springs, trapped in something no one can name, but keeps me confined to a room with no locks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. All right. So we're going to take a break quickly and get into our first giveaway question. Is everybody ready? So I will ask the question and you will have about 30 or 40 seconds or so to put your answers into the chat. First question of the evening. What are the names of Beth's dogs? If anybody knows the answer, wants to take a guess at the answer, go ahead and put those into the chat. Very nice. All right. So Beth, how do you want to handle when you get double winners?
Steph already has a mug. So if she, and a book, signed one. So if she wants a t-shirt, I can send it to her. Stacy, what do you prefer?
A mug.
All right.
Okay. And what I'll do, just so you guys have it, is in case you don't have Beth's direct contact information or Beth doesn't have yours, I'm going to put my email address in here so that we can ensure that we get the information that we need from the winners. Okay, so you see I'm at mescorn@ptv.net. So that way when we break away, we ensure that you guys get your goodies, okay? Yay, so nice job on the first question. All right, we're going to pivot back over to our readers now. Meg Pillow is up next. Meg holds an MFA in fiction from the University of Iowa Writers Workshop and a PhD in English literature from the University of Kentucky. She is co-editor of The Audacity, the new newsletter by Roxane Gay, and founder of Submerged, the archive of caregivers underwater. I love that name, by the way. That's pretty awesome. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in, among other places, Electric Literature, Smoke Long Quarterly, Hobart, Paper Darts, Brevity, Passages North, The Believer, Tri-Quarterly, and Gay Magazine, and has been featured in long reads. She lives in Louisville, Kentucky with her 2 children. Meg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lori and Beth. Thank you so much. I'm actually just across town from Beth and Aubrey and Jim, and I wish I could be there. It would be kind of a crowded room, but I'm so honored to be invited to read tonight. And the piece that I'm going to read tonight is actually inspired by one of the things that I really appreciate most about Beth's writing, and that is her vulnerability. I remember I read a piece by her. It was one of the first pieces of hers that I came across, and I'm going to see if I can get the title right. How to Tattoo a Disordered Woman, and it was published in Ninth Letter, and it was a fantastic piece. It just blew me away. And so I'm actually going to read a piece of CNF tonight that's brand new. It just got accepted at No Contact Mag, so it'll be out in, I don't know what timeline is yet, but it'll be out in in a while with them. And I don't have a book unless somebody wants to read my dissertation, which I don't recommend. So no books yet. Eventually they are coming. So after I read, I'm just going to drop into the chat my most recent, actually my newest column with Catapult. It's on sex writing. So I'll drop the link there in case anybody wants to read that. But what I'm going to read now is called When You Tell Me You Aren't Good with Words. I tell you, I have the words for the first moment I saw you. You were pushing that stalled car out of the middle of a busy road. You hadn't said anything yet, but you held your finger up to me and smiled, as if to say, just wait, as if to say, almost there. I didn't need to hear you speak to understand. I tell you how the first words you said to me seconds later were 1 minute, and I think I would have waited for you to cross that road to me for an hour or a day or a year. I tell you words are overrated. I tell you I know about the cries of your daughter and the anger of your aunts and the fears of your nieces and nephews and the pain of your stepdaughter. And I know you were at the center of them listening, and you don't need words for that. I tell you there's this way you put your arm around me and pull me close to you that feels like the rush of your breath against my neck. This way that you lace your fingers through mine that feels like the click of your tongue. I tell you that the sound of your lips parting before you speak to me is like the sound of a window opening up inside me somewhere. It fills me with light. I tell you I don't need the sound because I already know what you're going to say. I tell you I have enough words for the both of us. I tell you that still you take my hand and say, you've talked too much. You tell me you want to hear my stories. I tell you dozens. I tell them to you from the depths of my bed, from the depths of the dark. I imagine you across town in your own bed, in your own dark. You tell me you love the sound of my voice. I tell you the way you kiss me is word after word after word. The way you take my nipple in your mouth is a sentence that leaves me breathless. The way you grasp my neck and slide inside is a language, and you are teaching me again and again. And the thrust of every lesson populates a new vocabulary inside me. I tell you that other people have tried to teach me how to speak that way, and none of them have taught me more than a letter. I tell you that I knew the word for this before I even started writing it. I tell you that I wrote the ending first because you gave me the words to do it. I tell you that I had this dream last night that I went to a country I visited long ago because I heard the country calling me. I miss you, it said, come back. And so I flew there, and when I arrived, the streets were empty. But then there was a person walking towards me, and then there were people, a dozen, 100 of them, a legion of quiet that flooded the streets at the sound of me. They came from their houses, from the edges of the trees, from the ring of road, and the center of the water that surrounded them. One by one, they opened their arms to me. One by one, I went to them. They said nothing, but they held me, and I felt safe again. And then while one of them held me close, another person put their arms around him, and then someone put her arms around them, and another, until every single person held me in a layered embrace. And the trees around me burst into flower, and the gray sky washed itself blue before me, and the air caught in my throat like the way your fingers catch up a thing that you think you'd lost long ago. And deep in the center of that country of people, I felt this unmistakable echo, not the sound of the words, but the knowledge of them. Welcome home. And when I woke up, I realized that country was you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meg. That was lovely. All right. Hillary was scheduled to be our next reader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick pause and we'll just jump into the next giveaway question. And then we will move on to AC Warner. How's that sound? Sound good? All right. So the next giveaway question, who do you think is Beth's biggest author influence? Go ahead and drop your responses into the chat and we will see who our next winners are or is. Who's going to brave it and take a chance? Put that first answer in that chat. Her biggest author influence.
I mean, it's probably, yeah. Dan got it.
There you go, Dan.
Dan. I mean, it's not that hard. I would have also accepted Faulkner. Shirley Jackson, yeah.
When I read your
Flannery, we
story-
kind of need to let go, but yeah.
Yeah, years ago when I read your story in Little Protective Review, I told everybody, this is Carson McCullers.
Yeah, love it. That's one of my favorite stories, by the way. Yay!
Great story.
Awesome. So Dan, what would you like as your giveaway prize?
I want a signed book.
Sweet.
All right.
Done.
Hey,
Awesome.
thank you.
Nice job. All right. So moving on to our next reader of the evening, we have AC Warner. AC Warner's heart is metal and doom. Her poetry and flash have appeared in publications such as District Lit, Rogue Agent, Little Fiction, and Modern Haiku. She holds an MFA in poetry from Temple University and is currently a PhD candidate in rhetoric and composition at the University of Louisville. Her current writing and research focuses on embodiment, disability, nostalgia, and place. Take it away, AC.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read 2 short poems so we can keep this train moving. I do typically yell this poem, so I'm going to lean back a little from the mic and hopefully not burn it out. I feel like my bio should also just have that now. Maybe I'll just hire someone to scream that for me in the future. Very black metal. All right, so this first one is called Star Charts for the Mystic Who Parties with Scientists. He has the strength of the ages inked into his skin. He has constellations waiting to supernova and a chain reaction down his spine. He has the same genetic mutation as you. He has to calmly sit on roadside curbs for drug-hungry police interrogations. You, on the other hand, look fine and constantly lie. I'm just tired. He believes in your psychic dreams. He charts and screens your lovers. He is the occult and God's right-hand man. You like to think if you weren't such a liar, you could confront the degrees of fatigue. You could see what he sees. Dreams of Atlantis. The contortionist comes full circle. So this second poem is part of a sequence called Small Craft Advisory. And so each of them are just Small Craft Advisory 1, 2, and 3. So this one's 2. Shoulders buckling inward. This poem is hard, not because writing is hard, but because words are hard, because science, because nervous system, because sinkhole in my chest, soaking in Epsom salts like a mermaid who spent too much time on land. Voices in the static. I'm a semi-classical gravity, not to be mistaken with an eternally collapsing object. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. All right, moving right down the line, we're going to call up our next reader, which is Kathy Fish. Kathy has published 5 collections of short fiction, most recently Wildlife Collected Works. Find her stories in Plowshares, Copper Nickel, Washington Square Review, Best Small Fictions 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2020, The Norton Reader, and Best American Non-Required Reading. Subscribe to her newsletter if you are not already, and that is The Art of Flash Fiction. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I was sort of taken aback there because I was sitting back and relaxing and thinking that I had another half an hour before I had to read. So, okay. Thanks for having me, and congratulations, Beth. You are one of my favorite writers in the world, and I'm so excited this book is coming out. So congratulations. I'm just going to read something super short. It's called Petunias. People huddle in their basements like kittens. People laugh darkly, saying they'd rather be surfing. People wonder if their batteries are charged. People never do get what they want. People grow tired of the sad dog following them around. People want you to know how disappointed they are. People on their worst days consider a length of rope. People worry their minds are no longer sharp. People long to distinguish themselves. People sometimes kill their noblest instincts. People think you're ugly too. People recall the taste of ice cream. People remember when a fact was a fact and that was that. People tell you they never saw this coming. People thankfully never yearn for cows. People yearn for structure, their obsessions, street maps, road atlases, the lines of longitude and latitude. People learn the importance of precision. People discover untapped veins of kindness. People walk the rows of corn. People are here to remind you that's somebody's sister, mother, aunt. People slow down, finally become old. They stand in their backyards by the petunias at a loss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. All right. So we're going to take a pause and we're going to do another giveaway. You guys ready for the next question? Yes. All right. At what age did Beth write her first story? 4.
Bonus points if you can say what it's about.
So I would think 4 is a little too young. 12, okay.
Close. Marcia said Hall & Oates. That was actually a little later, and that was a play.
Oh, I remember that.
We got a guess of 10. Still haven't seen the right age.
Close.
Do we go warm or colder? Do we want to play that game? Hot or colder?
Jane's the closest so far.
Yeah. Good guesses, guys.
7 is right.
There you
Ding,
go,
ding.
Jane.
And I'm pretty sure it was about, because my mom has told me this out of sheer embarrassment, that it was about the fact that someone's mom only made chicken. And yeah, I mean, we were kind of poor, so you know, we ate a lot of chicken, and I guess I was tired of it. She was my principal at the time, so oops. So Jane, what would you like? Mug?
I think Jane's connecting from her phone. She might be struggling
Okay,
with
you can let
audio.
me know later, Jane. You have my number.
Yeah, or Jane, you can drop it right into the chat if you like as well. All right, so moving on to our next reader. Robert, are you ready? You're up next. So we have Robert James Russell. He's the author of the novellas Masilla from Dock Street Press and Sea of Trees from Winter Goose Publishing, and the chapbook Don't Ask Me to Spell It Out from Whiskey Paper Press. He is a founding editor of the literary journals Midwestern Gothic and Cheap Pop. You can find his illustrations and writing at robertjamesrussell.com or on Twitter and Instagram at Rob Hollywood. Robert, you are up, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I feel really silly whenever anyone says my Twitter handle out loud because it was my AOL screen name. And it stuck and I have to keep it now. And whenever I'm teaching my classes and I say something about AOL, the current crop of students have no idea what I'm talking about. It makes me very sad. That's all I got to say. Anyway, thank you, Beth, for inviting me to be here. And for Lori for all you're doing. And if y'all haven't read this book, it is unbelievable and really, really fantastic. So yeah, it's fantastic. I am going to read a short story. Short story sounds long in this context, a small story called You Owe Me, and it involves some bad accents. So at least one bad accent, so bear with me. And yeah, hold on, I need a drink first. It's been a while since I've read. Okay. We heard a story at the start of 7th grade, one we'd heard 100 times before, that took place in the early 1980s, the year Carle came out, a movie we'd only seen on basic cable, the good parts spliced out. Telling the story was a rite of passage meant to scare us into submission, a neighborhood myth meant to curtail nighttime bouts of bravery, sneakouts to girls' houses, any manner of adolescent deviances. The story goes like this. The boy named Jules and the girl named Kitty meet at the steep-banked creek behind our middle school on that last warm day of September. It's a Saturday. They'd met there all summer, first in June by coincidence. Jules, a close-cropped blonde boy, a Lutheran pastor's son, was pulling apart crawdads he'd fished out of the shallow water with his hands, discarding the wriggling legs and yellow guts on the muddy banks behind him. He wiped his hands along his shorts and saw across the bank a girl named Kitty, daughter of a fiery Methodist preacher, staring blankly at him. The girl, 14 to his 12, stood with a long cigarette hanging from her lips, a menthol she'd swiped from the purse of a woman in her congregation. Kitty, long curled auburn hair hanging to her shoulders, poofed up from the humidity, pulled out a cheap blue gas station lighter and lit and inhaled again and tried to blow smoke ring but couldn't. She let out a fetid, puttered gray worms of smoke. They call this Snake Creek, she said. I told you about it. Every time we hear this story, the first line spoken, that first bit of dialogue is always slightly off, different in some way, but it's always for reasons we're not sure of, spoken in a deep-fried Southern drawl. But there isn't any snakes, Jules said, just crawdads. Not for much longer the way you're going at them. And here, the storyteller laughs, you have to, like it's built into the narrative, a piece of coding hardwired, a signal to whoever's speaking to stop, tilt her head back and guffaw wildly. Ha 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 ha. The boy, shy and sheepish, sat back and made a nest in the tall Ravenna and silver grass. My cousin Rachel taught me a game, he said. What kind? She was wary of boys and their games. This much she knew already. It's called Jinx. She snorted. That's not a game. It's just something you say. Like if we said goodbye at the same time, I'd say, Jinx, you owe me a Coke. And then you'd have to buy me a Coke. She inhaled and coughed wildly and then crossed her arms around her tiny waist like she was Betty Davis or some such. And I keep track of all the Cokes boys owe me. He said Snake Creek under his breath and got up to leave, and so she did too. At the top of the hill, she yelled out Jinx, and Jules looked back at her. Kitty was pointing to the steep banks where they were, same spot on opposite sides. She smiled and he left, skinny shoulders shunted. The next week at the same time, Jules came back to the creek with a can of Coke he bought with change from 7-Eleven and half buried it in the silt to keep it cold. When Kitty showed up, he dug it out and gave it to her, and she smiled and said to him, I think we should do everything at the same time when we're together. Yes, he said. I think we're intertwined, cosmically, I mean. He said, yes. She told him about how her daddy, still sad about her mom leaving the two of them behind years ago, drained a 6-pack of Strohs every Friday night and cried out in the black soiled garden, hands shoved deep into the bitter warm soil. Jinx, he said. He told her about how his dad still spanks him hard when he speaks out of turn or doesn't act manly enough or asks questions about the Holy Spirit and why it's okay to believe in that, but not the ghosts the kids in your class told you live in your house because it's an old farmhouse and the farmer killed his family with a shotgun and then himself. Jinx, she said. She told him how her daddy leaves her alone for days at a time and comes back Sunday mornings early, right as the sun is rising, that she shouldn't tell anyone, that he comes home cut up and bruised, that he tells his congregation it was the devil himself he scrapped with on the road. Jinx, he said. He told her how his mom, sunken these days, barely comes out of her sewing room. She quilts and knits stacks of shirts and dresses and pajama pants promised to no one and doesn't answer when Jules calls. That his dad sneaks around with a woman from church with big hair and lots of rouge, a widow. That his dad threatened him once when he caught him, said he'd hurt him bad if he told. Jinx, she said. She said, I wish he was dead. Jinx. Here, though, in September, He's wearing orange-brown corduroys and a puffy vest, and she's in 2 big jeans and a baggy striped sweatshirt. In his hands is a brown paper bag, just like they talked about. She says, I read one time that we're all space stuff. Stuff, he repeats. Particles, pieces of things. We're all made up of the same stuff. He smiles weakly, almost not at all, but she likes it. She knows it. We pause here in the story for dramatic effect every time. Can you feel it? Remember what he said last week, she says. Do you remember? He searches in his mind, roots around. The sky is slated over a slight chill. It's a Saturday and they can hear the t-ball and slow pitch softball games in the nearby park, echoes of some other lives. He says, they pick up snakes and drink poison without being hurt. Jinx, she says. She says, I have given you authority so that you can walk on snakes and scorpions and overcome all the power of the enemy and that nothing will hurt you. Jinx, he says. She kicks off her strawberry red keds and wades through the creek, parting the water with little steps. Next to Jules, Kitty towers. She puts her arm around him and takes a menthol cigarette from her pocket. She has a bruise under her right eye he knows not to ask about. His ribs hurt, sore to even breathe, but he won't say a word. She lights it and inhales and hands it to him. They both cough, cheeks pinkening. Jinx. He looks up at the clouds and thinks one of them resembles the tiny mahogany coffin his little brother was buried in, the way it looked lowered into the earth in that tiny, narrow grave. Jinx. She tosses the cigarette into the water and it lands with a hiss. She grabs the paper bag from him and opens the top slowly and peers inside and sees 2 Eastern Masasaguas coiled together, patterns like dozens of eyes looking up, tails rattling now poised. One for you, one for me, she says. Nothing will hurt you, he says. Jinx. We know better, we do, but no matter how many times we hear it, we hope the ending might be different somehow, that strife and love might coexist. And on the count of 3, they reach their hands in and disrupt the snakes and volley them back and forth, agitate them until the snakes strike, sink their fangs deep into their fleshy thumb pads and wrists. It hurts so bad, like nothing they felt before, thunder in their palms like the word of God himself, but they hold their hands in, stare at the creek, then one another, then the sky parting now yellow and hazy. Kitty is the first to jerk her hand away. They stagger backwards and fall down along the clay. The snakes slither out of the bag and away. The creek water, the whooshing into the nearby culvert, booms wildly and blackens like coal there under the road. The clay beneath them is cold and hard. Kitty's tongue is swollen and she can't speak anymore, and Jules' eyes roll back and his lids shut tight and he can't see a thing, but there they are together, and it will be days before anyone finds them and weeks before anyone can make sense of it, and months and years until all that's left of them in the ground is bones and ash and tattered cloth straps, imperceptible from one another. And Jinx. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was awesome. Yeah, damn, Rob. All right, thank you again. Next up, we have Jim Warner. Jim Warner's poetry has appeared in various journals, including the North American Review, Rhino, Hobart, No Tokens, New South, and is the author of 2 collections from Paper Kite Press. His most recent collection, Actual Miles, was published in 2018 Sundress Publications. He currently lives in Louisville, Kentucky with his wife, Aubrey. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Long time no see to some faces. It's really, really nice to see y'all. And I can't think of a better reason to be right here, right now, than to
Don't let him fool you.
than to celebrate Beth's work. It's a long time coming. And seriously,
Okay, I'm done now.
Are you done? Are you done?
I'm done.
All right.
Not your turn yet.
Yeah. You'll get to undermine all this shit in a second, all right? It is incredibly easy, and I know that most of you already know this already. And it's incredibly easy to be jaded about writing, about the writing community, about the work, about the lonely hours spent with a page, and the minimal return on investment, possibly. Beth restores my faith in writing every single time I talk to her about her work. Every time I open pages in this new book, Deadheading, heart, soul, she is as important to a literary community as you can possibly be. You know, that phrase, literary citizen, that gets battered around way too fucking much. and cheapened way too often. She brings it value. And she won't be the first person to say it about herself because, she's too busy giving me horns, but it's the goddamn truth. And everyone in this room right now knows it. So I'm going to keep my shit short. I got two pieces. First one being the title of this book, and then one other incredibly short one. So it's called Actual Miles. Standing in a cornfield of busted light bulbs, I will willingly trade your echo for my sister's blood. It's raining pages and Polaroids in a snow globe tourist trap I've spent 8 hours to get to. Knuckles split like record sleeves, dropping vinyl into paper homes without care or consideration to landing. Hands, well, they relax. Tone arms, spring sprung, busted. I skate the needle across dirty vinyl skies, so cloudy. The billboard I've been absently walking towards tells me everything I want to know about where I'm going. Instead of the cats, apparently. My eyes lose luster. Twin red maples pass their seasonal landscape peak. This school portrait no longer compass points between home and work. The commute grows long hair, washes its broken dishes by streetlight. We are all 1 hour apart. The moon is ripe with your fingertips. So I was trying to think of a poem, and I'm not really sentimental in terms of the fucking writing of poems and stuff. I was trying to think of a poem that like kind of encompasses my friendship, with my tag team partner in verse, my literary sister. And this is about as good as I get. It's a little haiku. Tennessee handshake. The mall goth smiles at us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. I don't know if you noticed, Jim, I put in the comment, you should have posted the event. That was very well said. Put me to
Trying to make me
shame.
cry.
Well,
Aw.
tomorrow I got to do the interview here at Carmichael's, and I have to be, I got to put on the citizen radio voice, talk about radio personality, and not actually just cut a promo and go full ham for Beth. But it's hard not to. It really is. And anyone in this room feels that, I know. So
Yeah. Well, thank you very
Yep.
much.
Mind us.
Aw. Hello, kitty. So I accidentally left a reader out of the lineup. We have Steph Post, who will be reading next, but before she takes the stage, and I believe I've been watching, she's having some internet issues, but I believe she's still here with us. I did want to ask the final giveaway question. And this one's pretty timely because it has to do with Jim himself. So the question, if you are ready, what movie did Jim Warner recommend to Beth that made her so mad that she texted, "You are dead to me"? What was the movie that pissed her off? Go ahead and dump your responses into the chat. And I feel like I should have pre-recorded or saved the Jeopardy music because people are putting their stuff in instead of the awkward silence.
do we need like, so yeah,
You can give hints if you want to.
so I literally,
The Shining.
No, I like The Shining.
a hint, if it's not abundantly clear, Pat, like Beth is a animal lover and pets. So think about a movie that would totally piss her off and then make her, text that to me.
Pet Cemetery.
Good guess, Ursula.
That's, yeah.
Warm. Good guess, KB. Newer than that.
2017, 16, 17.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
It would have been 15 or 16.
Because we were in, were we in Knoxville or Philly? Okay.
What's the guy's the lead actor? Colin Farrell is the lead actor in it. Yeah. Ooh, John Wick. Yeah, I love those movies, but I did have to have that fast forwarded through that part.
It's an A24 film.
Good guess, Rob.
Oh, wow.
Do we have to like
That
maybe give like the first letter of the movie? Would that help? Do you think that'll get people there?
It's about a crustacean. Ooh, 7 psychopaths. That's good. That was a good one. Yes,
Yeah,
you
that
got
There
it,
you go,
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Lobster. There is a dog murder in that movie.
I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. I mean, really? Because as soon as I got the text, like, I mean, just like,
We were walking downtown and I thought you were.
Same, Jane.
yeah, I mean, really, just color left my. I looked white. That's how much color, ran on my face.
He's still worried about it, but it's okay. So, what would you like as your prize, Chelsea? Sweet.
Okay.
Got you down.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. That was probably the most fun. There were a lot of good guesses in there. All right, so Steph, we're going to introduce Steph to the floor. Steph Post is an American writer. Her books include Lightwood, Walk in the Fire, and A Tree-Born Cricket. She teaches writing in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I apologize if that is an old bio, Steph. I pulled it right off of the internet. But we're ready for you if you're ready.
Oh, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay,
Hi,
sorry.
Steph.
Technology is not my friend tonight. Oh, no. Where did we go? Okay. Yes. All right. I'm good. Okay, so everyone can see me and hear me, right? Okay. I'm gonna read just one paragraph from my most recent novel that came out last year, Holding Smoke. And I wanted to read just this paragraph because it's really talking about the female characters in the book. And Beth and I talk about this all the time, about how she's just brilliant at writing female characters. And it's funny, when I was actually writing this scene with Raimi, who's my main female character in the series, I was like, I had Beth in mind a little bit. So I kind of jumped out like, oh my gosh, I should probably read this little part tonight. So here we go. Instead of hiding, Raimi had watched. The men at the table, the boys in the yard, the closed door protecting her sister. In doing so, she picked up curse words and insight and scars. The burn on the inside of her thigh from the man who had put his cigarette out on her bare leg as she'd walked past him toward the fridge was one she would never forget. Before Leroy had even been able to get to his feet, Raimi had broken a beer bottle over the man's head, glass shards and schlitz and blood spraying out all over the flung hands of 5-card draw. The wound wasn't her first, and by no means would it be her last. But in the whip of her shoulder and the crack of her wrist, Raimi had found her place. She'd grown up knowing the world was for men. All the girls where she came from did. Some, like her sister, buried themselves in River Phoenix dreams and hoped the world would be different one day. Some girls learned early to laugh, some to use the body that would one day be used against them. Some simply gave up and retreated to the shadows. Raimi watched. And that day, she had fought. And she'd continued to watch and to fight, sometimes silently, sometimes until her throat was raw and the bruises bloomed, always choosing the hardest road, it seemed, because she preferred the broken glass to the giggle or the wink or the darkness. Raimi didn't necessarily think she was smart, but she was stubborn as hell. Anyone could give her that. And she had been determined to carve out a space for herself in a realm that so often seemed to have no use for her. That's it.
Thank you so much, Steph. And I'm glad your internet hung in there.
I know, right? Like it worked.
Damn technology.
I know.
Awesome. All right. So are we ready for me to introduce our shining star of the evening, We're bringing Beth to the forefront. She has sat back and listened to all of the wonderful readers tonight, and now she's going to put you all to shame. Beth, I'm going to read your intro, and then the floor is yours. So Beth Gilstrap is the author of Deadheading and Other Stories, out today, yes, which is the winner of the 2019 Red Hen Press Women's Prose Prize. She is also the author of I Am Barbarella Stories, 2015, from 12 Winters Press, and No Man's Wild Laura, 2016, from Hyacinth Girl Press. Born and raised in the Charlotte area, she recently relocated to Louisville, where she lives and writes in an ornery old shotgun house. She also lives with CPTSD and is quite vocal about ending the stigma surrounding mental illness. Beth, it's the Cinderella hour. Take it
When you put
over.
together a lineup like this, it's kind of like, I don't really want to read after all of that. But thank you all for being here. It means the world to me. I'm overwhelmed in a good way for once. So yay. Forgive me if my voice catches or if I get emotional. I'm trying really hard not to, because I did not invest in waterproof mascara. So please, Jim, do not make me cry. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. All right, so I'm gonna read just a 5-minute-ish excerpt from the title story, Deadheading, because I know everyone's tired and a lot of people have read, and I've been to enough of these things to know y'all are ready to go. But first, I will say that deadheading is a gardening term, and I did not, in fact, follow the Grateful Dead around. The closest I ever made it was a parking lot, and that's about all I remember. So we'll just leave that alone. So it's called Deadheading, and it is a linked story to Still Soft, Still Whole. So, and I'm not going to finish it because I don't want it to exist anywhere outside of this book. So you'll have to read it and find out what happens. Every morning, Layla drank her coffee on the porch of her little shotgun house up in the hills, an hour outside of nowhere, the music of the land, all she could hear, save for an occasional plane on its way to Asheville. Rituals like 2 cups of coffee outdoors in her nubby lounge pants before the day's work began helped set her mind right. Get some distance from her shit marriage, like replacing a blood-stained sheet for one freshly laundered, like replacing volatile. Volatile was what she told police when they came looking for Beau after he disappeared, asking questions Layla couldn't answer. The man never told Layla anything about his goings-on. All she could see was his descent. The panicked way he stomped around the house, the staggering weight he lost in a few short months. She'd spent the better part of 2 years trying to make sense of it. And so each morning she sipped from the same chipped, seize the day, then go back to bed mug her sister had given her years ago. Before their mama died, before they'd married the wrong men, when they still spent half their nights at home. Dee had left the thing on the kitchen counter with a Hershey's bar and a note. Happy birthday, bitch. Easy joy was Layla's focus these days. Since she moved, Layla had stopped getting her hair cut, and the way it brushed against her elbows when she rocked made her skin prickle. She relished coffee with chicory, chocolate pound cake for breakfast from her mama's recipe taped to the mini fridge. After the collapse of her marriage, easy was all she could hope for. The thought of any romantic attachment made her hands tremble, hands big-knuckled and strong from staking tomatoes and kneading bread, flour and earth and green forever caked in her nails. Instead of a second marriage, she knew her future lay in grains, in the tensile strength of plants, and hanging on to the fibrous textures of the flora she'd immersed herself in, deadheading flowers and pounding dough and pulling weeds. She hadn't minded too much about Beau's mysterious departure. After the incident with the snake and all, she was relieved at how quickly her marriage had ceased to be. It could have been uglier, but when she said those words out loud, folks would look at her sideways and say things like, Layla, honey, you can't mean that. The man up and vanished and everybody knows what come of him. he was your husband. She'd always nod and say, yes, yes, of course, of course. I didn't mean it that way, my poor angel. But most folks didn't know about the incident or how he'd changed since they married. They didn't know she was lucky things went the way they did, or she might be the one disappeared into nothing like so many women before her. Folks hadn't seen the blood smear on his forehead, still wet as he ate a bowl of cereal. Folks hadn't seen the way he hacked off that snake's head and pulled out those bird babies, or how he tossed them in her lap. 2 years later, she still couldn't reconcile the man she'd married to the man at her kitchen table that morning. After they found his car stripped at the junkyard, Layla had no trouble turning the house they'd lived in together over to the men who come for it. 3 brothers, each one more leathered than the next, with baseball bats resting on their shoulders. The light that day was July bright and blinding. No part of anyone, least of all Layla or the backs of her knees, was dry. The biggest fella smacked a mosquito on his neck, pulled a handkerchief from his back pocket, and wiped his whole face, including the corners of his mouth. Lady, we need a word, he said, folding the handkerchief and placing it back in his pocket. The polite thing to do would be to introduce yourself, she said, shielding her eyes with her hand. I don't believe I've met any of y'all before. Layla wore her daisy house dress, the one she mooned over and bought because, yes, the print was her favorite flower, but mostly because it had pockets. A dress with pockets is a reason to celebrate on its own, but as she slid her right hand down to grip the revolver she was hiding, she congratulated herself again for a fine dress purchase. Besides, I knew you needed a word the minute you turned up my street. I don't know where Beau's at, if that's what you're after. No, ma'am, it ain't. And my name's Waylon, and these are my brothers, if you want to know. The other 2 stood mute, rolling their bats on their shoulders. I hate you're mixed up in your husband's affairs, but I can't change the facts. And the fact is, this house here belongs to us now. Layla took a few steps closer to the brothers. The air was stagnant, and even the tall grass seemed to wince under the heat. She held tight to the gun, running her thumb over the handle. The men straightened their backs, and the mute brothers glanced from Layla to Waylon and back again. She looked over her shoulder at the house, took a deep breath, and sighed. I never wanted this place anyway. As far as I can see, Beau got what was coming to him, and the fact that he got it before he could do me any more harm than he did is a damn miracle. She let go of the gun and reached her hand out to Waylon. Give me some time to gather my things, she said, looking hard into the man's gray eyes. He could have been attractive if he'd been there under different circumstances. I'm not sure it's a good idea to let you, he said, scanning the house and yard again. You'll get no trouble from me. Take it, she said. From the moment I crossed the threshold, my life's been shit. The brothers lowered their bats. The smallest one said, we're awful sorry for coming here like this, but honey, let me tell you, your man was some nasty piece of work. His brows pinched and he took half a step forward before changing his mind, and he and the other quiet one returned to the beater they come in. We'll give you a week to collect your things, Waylon said. That's about the best we can do. Do the smart thing, ma'am. I don't want to hurt someone who looks so much like my mama. A cluster of clouds rolled in front of the sun, and a breeze kicked up and swallowed itself again before anyone had a chance to be grateful. I'll be out by Friday, she said, waving goodbye with one hand and wrapping her waist with the other, like she was saying farewell to someone dear, the pain of which burrowed into her belly. She kept her word. Layla took 2 days to gather a few copper planners that had belonged to her mother, her daddy's mantle clock, and though she'd long since distanced herself from it, his beloved marked up King James. Pulling clothes out of her closet, she realized she didn't need half of what she had. She dropped an armful of dresses on the floor and walked out with 1 suitcase and 2 boxes. Objects take on an energy, and she had no wish to carry it with her. And I'm going to stop it there.
All right, everybody take yourself off of mute. Give her a round of applause.
Incredible.
So good.
You're incredible, Beth.
Yay.
So good.
So good.
Yay. So that brings us to the end of the readings. I'm going to congratulate you once again, Beth, on the launch of your book. Long awaited, yet it came by so quickly. I don't know, when you look back in time, all the anticipation leading up to it, and it's here, it's finally here. I also want to thank you very much for trusting me with your book and being able to provide the publicity for it. It was a huge honor. And I hope everybody, I know you all bought copies for yourself, but go out and buy copies for your friends and families, leave them in the little libraries, the free little libraries that are out there. Get everybody to read this book. It's amazing. You guys know that I'm preaching to the choir. So thank you again to all of our fabulous readers. We had Nancy, KB, we had Meg, Aubrey, Kathy, Robert, Jim, Steph, and of course, Beth. So round of applause to everybody that made this such a fabulous night. Thank you for all of your readings. Make sure if you hadn't already, drop your information into the chat so people can follow you, find out more about you, and buy your stuff as well. All right, and I am going to take us off of recording now.